we don't have a marketing budget, right? Or we didn't have one, and we had to do something else than all the big players in the market that have a lot of marketing budgets. So we had to do something, very different or aggressive, as you described it. And so for us, we also don't have the costs of a big team or anything like that. And we can grow at our own pace, so we could make 99% of the product free.
Ciao, io sono Marco Imperato e questo è il podcast di Product Heroes. Product Heroes è l'ecosistema per chi fa product management in Italia. In questo episodio parleremo di bootstrapping estremo, ovvero come dire di no ai venture capital e dire di sì alla libertà. Come passare da 0 a 11.000 utenti senza spendere un solo euro di marketing. Come adottare una modalità freemium in cui il 99% di tutto quello che viene offerto è gratis e soltanto l'1% si paga. Ma soprattutto come passare da 0 a 3 milioni di euro di annual recurring revenue con un team di soltanto 4 persone full time. Parleremo anche di startup, amore e lockdown ai tempi del Covid. E lo faremo in compagnia di Marie Martens, che è co-founder di Tally, l'azienda che ha oggi 700.000 utenti, ha un team soltanto di 4 persone e fa 3 milioni di euro l'anno in recurring revenue. Mari sarà anche speaker alla Product Heroes Conference di quest'anno, il 9 e il 10 ottobre a Milano, per cui se ti va di conoscerla e fare due chiacchiere con lei, questo è il momento giusto per fare il biglietto. Ne rimangono veramente pochi ancora in early bird, dopodiché si passerà al full rate. Ci aspettiamo anche quest'anno tra 900 e 1000 persone. Abbiamo già avuto la conferma dei più grandi product leader al mondo e tantissime persone come te che fanno parte della community di Product Heroes, che si ritroveranno tutte a Milano gli stessi giorni, 9 e 10 ottobre 2025. Ciao Mari, welcome to Product Heroes.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you just because we use Tally for everything. So the first time I reached you out was just a screenshot of, I don't know, hundreds of new Tally because it's so easy to create that we use for everything. So I would love to start with your story. I read a lot because you gave a lot of details on how you started Tally, but obviously we want to hear your words.
Yeah, of course, happy to share. I'm Marie, I'm a co-founder of Tally, and Tally is a simple way to create online forms and surveys without needing to know how to code. We found it, and when I say we, I mean myself and my partner Philip, who's my partner and also co-founder. We founded Tally in 2020, so we've been at it for about 5 years. We now have around 800,000 users worldwide. And we're bootstrapped, so we are not VC backed. We're self-funded, and we have a very small team of 4 full-time and 4 part-time people right now. Tally is mostly used by, I would say, creators, freelancers, and startups to create beautiful forms in seconds, can go from event registrations to feedback surveys to quizzes, anything, any data that you would like to collect. You can do that with Tally.
Great. First question, why online forms? I mean, looks like something is not so exciting, because it's an online form. Why did you decide to go after the online forms thing?
Yeah, it's a very boring industry, you could say, indeed. I think for us, we decided to bootstrap, right? And that meant that we didn't have the budget to educate the market. So we wanted to launch a product in a very crowded space where we know that there's a lot of demand. Every company needs a form at some point. We don't need to explain why you need forms, it's just the demand is there. But we thought that we could kind of reinvent the way that you build forms. And it's a bit of an issue that we experienced ourselves. We had used Google Forms in the past because it's free and it's pretty powerful, but we didn't like the customization or the way how it looks. You cannot customize it to blend in with your brand. And then we had used players like a Typeform that are easy to create beautiful forms with, but they can get really expensive because they have this volume-based pricing. So we thought there's maybe something in between there, a very simple and intuitive form builder, but with a very different pricing model. because we offer unlimited submissions and forms for free, which is something that no one was actually doing at the time. And we thought if we can do this, then we might be able to claim a small part of that very big market. And that's why we decided to go into forms, because we thought, we've experienced this problem ourselves. Maybe we can use a tool or build a tool that we would actually love to use. A bit like how Notion managed to make note-taking fun in the beginning. That was our goal. How can we do the same with forms?
You said one thing that actually created in my mind two different questions, so I will try to be, very focused. So you said we decided to go bootstrapping instead of raising money. Why?
Yeah, good question. I think it kind of ties back to how me and Philip started working together. We had this dream to build our own business, and actually we wanted to become digital nomads. So we didn't have the dream of raising money and building a big team. We just kind of were curious about, is there a future where we can build a sustainable income for our family, and can we do that while we travel, and we code and we surf at the same time? That was like the dream. And that's kind of how we got started with our first startup, which was called Hotspot. It was a platform that connects influencers with hotels, so it's a completely different market. And we started working on that, and then in the beginning of 2020, I decided to quit my job at the time, and we both went full in.
2020.
2020, indeed, yeah. So that's where you name it.
Perfect timing.
Worst timing. Everyone was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? No one said pandemic, of course. So yeah, that's what happened. We lost all our customers, the market closed. We had to go back and go into lockdown. And that's kind of how we then pivoted and ended up with the idea of Tally. But so when we started building Tally, we were still in this mindset of let's do it by ourselves. I have a background in marketing. Philip is a full stack engineer. We have everything in our skill set to at least take this from 0 to 1. And I think at the same time, because we're also partners in life, we also wanted to have kids and build a family. And we thought it would be very difficult to combine that with having investors on board and having external pressure. So we needed that flexibility to be able to figure things out as we were growing. And that's kind of where the idea comes from of bootstrapping this. We were also pretty active in the indie hacker space and kind of loved the idea of small teams building big things. So that's how it started, and that never changed for us, and we're even more convinced of our bootstrapped status as we grow. Yeah.
Second question related to bootstrapping. Did you decide to go bootstrapping before deciding which product to launch, or was the other way around? Like, we want to do the hotel influencer thing. Do we bootstrap or do we raise money?
Yeah, the bootstrapping was it was not even something we really talked about. For us, it was like normal. Like we were just trying to build our own business, and it was already like that with the hotel business. So it was just us trying to build something, and actually the conversation about having investors only came, I think, 1 year later after we launched on Product Hunt in 2021, and we started getting a lot more attention, and more investors started reaching out. And at that point, we started doubting a little bit, like, should we maybe go the VC-backed route? But we never did, and I'm pretty happy that we didn't. But it was kind of a decision that was there from the start. Yeah.
Great, because I saw a lot of founders that actually bootstrapped having this mental model. So it wasn't like I have this genius idea, I want to build a 2 billion users company, okay, how can I do it? It's like, I want to learn. I want to understand if I am able to do it. I want to be curious around the space. Eventually can become something, but this something is not the final goal. Actually, the final goal was learning and having an income to sustain yourself for the first 18 months. Is another story, this one. Maybe it's not yours, but it's very similar.
It's similar indeed. It's a different mindset, unless of you're like, okay, I have this idea and I'm gonna raise money and I'm gonna immediately build a team. For us, it was more like, let's start building a product. Let's see if we can get traction, if we can get revenue, and then let's just grow organically and more slowly at our own pace. And let's then build the team, whenever there's enough money to fund ourselves, basically. Yeah.
Okay, this is a super interesting story, but I'm pretty sure that our listeners are asking themselves, okay, but how? How did you do it? So you went in 2021, as I can read. So guys, read the blog at Tally, is like blog.tally.io, if I'm not wrong. SO, sorry.
Yeah.
You find like they are building in public. So it's super interesting, super inspiring. And you wrote that you go from 0 to 11,000 users the first year with 5,000 euros, if I'm not wrong, in monthly recurring revenue the first year. So how did you get started? So what was the channel? And if you had to do it today, would you choose the same strategy / channels?
Yeah, I think I would definitely do the same. I would probably even do more of what we did. So for us, how we grow now, it's really product-led growth, right? So we have a very generous free tier. You create a free form, and on the free form you have Tally branding. So whenever someone creates a form, forms are viral by nature. They are meant to share. They share it with respondents. The people fill out the form and they see, oh, this form looks good. It's made with Tally. Let me go and check out the product. So that's how we've been actually growing the first years. But the very first, to get that viral loop going, we needed to have that first set of 1,000 users indeed. We needed to get those in, and we did that by cold outreach, really. So we started building in public as well from day one, just sharing everything we were doing, mainly on Reddit and social media. But we would go to Product Hunt. That was our main source, and there we would find people that have upvoted similar products. So it could be a form builder or any productivity tool or anything in the no-code space, anything that could be related to ours. And then I would find the contact details of those people manually. That's maybe something I would do differently now. You can automate it a bit more now. But I think the good part about doing it manually is that we would really dig pretty deep and see like, okay, is this a founder? Is this a creator? Is this someone that works in a product team? Is it someone that could be interested in our product? And then I would send them a DM and say, hey, we're building Tally. We'd love to hear your opinion about it. It's free. We didn't even have the paid tier in the beginning. Would you like to try it out? And then if they did that, we would invite them to our Slack channel, and quite a lot of people joined. And that's kind of how we started having this continuous feedback loop of early users that were interested in the product, tested it, gave us feedback, joined our Slack channel, and then we could keep on communicating and talking to them. So we did this for 6 months, I think. And then we had 1,000 users. And then we launched on Product Hunt. And then I think this was like the first bigger moment of visibility, the first growth push that we really needed for Tally. And because we already had that set of 1,000 users, they also backed us up on launch day. So they upvoted, they promoted Tally, they were sharing the launch with us. And then we doubled the user base in one day. And after that, we noticed that the organic growth started kicking in, so that more people started creating forms. And the product started selling itself because of the viral nature of forms and because of our freemium model. So it was really cold outreach and just being very open and sharing a lot, and a very short feedback loop that got us to the first 1,000. And after that, really the virality of the product kind of kicked in, and we started growing more organically.
How many users did you contact manually in the first 6 months?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I don't know because I didn't keep track. It was some kind of Google sheet. I don't even have it anymore, I think, but it was thousands of people. I would do this all day for 6 months, so
Love it.
A lot, yeah.
Love it. Because there is this strange idea that is like magic at the beginning, that
Yeah.
you can do ads from day one, but if you don't have the right feedback loop, the right segmentation of the users, you're building, this is my opinion, obviously, but you're building too many things and you don't know how these things can be interesting for whom, and
Yeah.
then how much are they willing to pay, how to create the freemium, funnel and stuff like that. So I love the idea. This is what we tell founders in Product Heroes. I mean, we bootstrap it the same way. So I contacted manually every single person to just read the blog.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's sometimes you just you just have to put in the work, and it's not the most sexy popular answer that a lot of founders love to hear, but for us it was just doing this like over and over and over again until we had enough people to move on to the next step, and that's still very much how I approach growing Tally right now. We do a lot of things that don't scale, and then once we figure out how to do it, we can move on.
There is a saying that I read many years ago that do things that don't scale until it's so much pain that
Yeah.
you have to
You
build
have
them
to.
and
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
And
Indeed.
I love it. Like when the pain is unbearable, when you are like, okay, that's it, it's enough, then you start
Yeah.
building.
And when you see the result, right? When you know, like, okay, this process works, then automate it or then, scale it. But before that, there's no point in doing so.
One tricky question. So you said I reached out to thousands of people, then a portion of them will use Tally, and a portion of them will get into our Slack channel. So
Yeah.
you start to make your Slack channel grow up to 400 people at the beginning. So the tricky question is, how do you balance like the feedback you receive from Slack, the community that you obviously want them to grow, feeding part of your story, with the real roadmap? And
Yeah.
how are you like gentle with those people
Yeah.
giving you feedback all the time? How do you
Yeah.
manage that?
I think in the early years, in the first years, it was pretty easy because the product was still very basic. So it was like a lot of the feedback we were getting were also like no-brainers, like we didn't have all the input fields yet. We didn't have all the, not everything that competitors have. So it was more easy, I think, to get the feedback in. And then also just like Philip would sometimes literally, someone would ask something and it would be live the next day, that's how we were operating. So we were just very happy with the feedback we were getting. So it was like instant almost. Obviously, as the user base grew and the Slack channel grew as well, it became really difficult for us to maintain that balance. And at one point we had to change things a bit. So in the beginning, what we did is we had feedback coming in from all channels. We would also do customer support ourselves, which obviously learns you, a lot about the product and about how people use it. We had this Notion database, which we manually updated. And every conversation we had, we would go in and would say, oh, have we talked about this before? We would upvote it, so like a manual feedback board. But we would also add context. And that was, I still believe that was crucial for us to get a very deep understanding of what our users wanted us to build, and what we should build next. And by doing that manually, it became pretty easy for us to define the roadmap, because we knew what people were asking, but we were talking to people, so we weren't just upvoting features, right? We were really looking at what's the solution to their problem. It's not always the feature that someone is asking for. Like, you cannot expect super clean product specs from your users. Like, they might ask for a feature, but they actually need something else. And by keeping track of all of that manually and adding notes, we got a pretty good idea of what to build. And so that went pretty easy in the beginning. But then when we grew, our team size didn't grow that fast because we were bootstrapped, but the user base grew really fast. And so we didn't have the team size, we didn't have the support team, we didn't have the systems in place to capture all the feedback still in an efficient way, and then also indeed please the users and make sure that we shipped fast. So I think that's one of the mistakes we made after 2 or 3 years. We were just doing customer support, and the volume was getting so high because we have a lot of free users as well, and we always made sure that customer support was the number one priority. And so we became slower. We couldn't ship the features, we couldn't answer everyone, and that's like the moment where we had to, it became too painful. We had to implement new systems. And then we switched to having a canny, a feedback board where people can go and upvote themselves. And it was a bit painful for us because we knew we were going to lose context. But we gave it in the hands of the community. There's thousands of feature requests in there now. But of course, by then, we had done all of this manually the first years. So we have a pretty good idea, what to do in the next years, basically. And now we're with 8 people, but 4 people are working on customer support. So we're still talking to users every day and making sure we learn what they need. And then we explain, look, we're a small team. We hear your feedback. You can upvote it here. This is the public roadmap. This is what we will be working on next. And then, if it gets more upvotes, obviously, it's more likely that we will implement it on the short term. And that's kind of how it works. But it's always a bit of a give and take, and it's not a perfect process, but that's how we evolved.
Well, it doesn't have to be perfect. We know it very well. The interesting thing for me is that actually I can say your strategy is customer support. So you basically offer customer support, but in reality, customer support is the way in which you can hear candid feedbacks from users, segmenting them, giving the right context, and prioritize. Super interesting. One thing that got me super curious about your freemium model that is very aggressive in the other way. So everything is free. It's like 99% of the things you can do are free, and basically 2% of the total user base pay for all the product. So how did you came to this decision? Did you iterate, A/B test? So what was the moment in which you decided, we go from free for everyone to someone has to pay to do what?
Yeah, we didn't test anything. We did this from the beginning just because we figured that we don't have a marketing budget, right? Or we didn't have one, and we had to do something else than all the big players in the market that have a lot of marketing budgets. So we had to do something, very different or aggressive, as you described it. And so for us, we also don't have the costs of a big team or anything like that, and we can grow at our own pace. So we could make 99% of the product free. And that's how we grow. And by doing that, we really differentiated ourselves in the market. And we very early on learned that this is why people were choosing Tally. It's the free model. And then combined with our user experience, the interface that is different, that is, more flexible, more intuitive. And that became like the golden combination for us. So it was a decision we made from the start. It was actually completely free in the beginning. And then we added Tally Pro, a few months in, when someone actually asked us, hey, I get so much value out of the product, I would like to pay. And that's when we enabled Stripe. And there's other examples, right? Like we've used Notion, we use Figma, we use Slack. They all have free tiers, and you can build a pretty big business on the free tiers. And at one point you're like, my team is bigger, my business is bigger. I use these tools for so long, it's just a no-brainer to pay for them now. And I think that is the feeling that we wanted to achieve. And that's the feedback that we get as well from users. Obviously, there's different types of users. We need the free users because they promote us, because of the distribution indeed. But we also, most of the companies, our Tally Pro is $29 a month. It's one of the lowest on the market. It's a no-brainer for a company to upgrade and just remove our branding, have more customization features, have team collaboration. So a lot of people just upgrade immediately as well, just because even the paid tier is priced, very generously. So it's a huge part of our strategy since the beginning. I don't think we would be where we are today without a free tier. So it's kind of what makes Tally Tally. Yeah.
You know what I love from what you're saying? That what you're describing is the precise example of strategy. Because what people usually get wrong about strategy is that is some genius idea on how to go on the market. While to me, strategy is like basically is coherence of a set of actions, and everything has to talk each other together. And so you decided to bootstrap, so you have a tiny team. So you can have lower price. So you can use the 99% of the user that don't pay as your product-led growth strategy. But if you think about this from the outside, that is me, because we've been talking for like 24 minutes. If you take one single thing out, all the model crash.
Yeah,
So this
indeed.
is great.
And I think that's important as well, because it is not a playbook that you can just copy. You cannot leave elements out. Like, you need to have indeed all the elements together and able to make it work. And I think to have this PLG strategy, it starts with the product. It needs to be free, but it needs to be very low barrier. You need to be able to give a lot of value fast. And it needs to be viral, so it needs to be something that you can share or where you can add your branding on. If you don't have all of those elements, then it becomes pretty difficult, to do this.
I see. So let's go to some pains, because you are a tiny team, so you can do a few things. How do you say no to 99.9% of the things you should do, they ask you to do? How do you prioritize?
It's difficult. I think we became better at it. The good thing about bootstrapping is that you have the natural constraint of not having a lot of people. The good thing about having kids is that you have even less hours in a day. So you need to be very strict with your time. And I think that combination just made us ruthless, like ruthless prioritization is very important, has been very important for us. So no meetings, almost no meetings, no calls unless we feel like, okay, this can really add value for Tally. Trying to only work on the one thing per day that will really move the needle, right? So, and trying not to get distracted. And if you only have a limited set of hours in a day, it gets easier to just say no to everything else. Of course, like, we have a set of, I would say, rules when it comes to saying no, like product-wise. We just look at, we know that Tally works because Tally is simple, Tally is free to use, and Tally is us. Tally is about our story. We're bootstrapped. We're building in public. It's very much tied to the founder's story as well. And so, if we decide on what to work next, we kind of take these things into account. Like, is it something that we can launch for free? Will it help us grow? That was our main criteria for the past years. It's only this year that we launched a bit more paid features. Is it simple or easy to use? Like, will we be able to give it just in the hands of a lot of users, and will they be able to use it? Because we don't like keeping it simple, also make sure that there's less customer support. And so it's this continuous loop. So, it needs to be, and will it help us grow, obviously? And then as well, how long will it take us to ship this? Like, how can we MVP it, and how can we scope it down? And so all these things help to keep on moving, to say no. And we also just learned that we want to do one thing extremely well, and that's to build, a form building tool that people love to use. And so we very consciously decided not to build other products, not to move away from our core, and just do this only one thing. And by doing that, and by keeping things simple, which is extremely hard, it's just a daily mental exercise. That's the only way in which we can keep on doing this with a small team. Yeah. And you learn that the hard way. Sometimes you say yes to things, and then you're like, I just lost 2 days on something I shouldn't have been working on, and yeah, it gets easier, I guess, by time.
I love it because I'm super obsessed by focus. And this morning, casually, just before your interview, I was watching a video of Johnny Ive talking about working with Steve Jobs. And I was talking about that with my co-founder about focus. So what is focus? What actually mean prioritization? Because I think people get confused. So everyone thinks that being focused is saying no to things that you don't actually want to do. You would say no anyway. While what Johnny Ive was saying is that a real no from Steve Jobs was take something you really want to do, something like you love to do now, and say no to it. So this is prioritization, this keep you focused. And I feel what you're saying, like when you are invited to a podcast like this one, maybe you spend time for preparation and do that, but you know that you can spend time on other things. So you have to be sure that how you spend your time is the most valuable thing. So I love your answer.
Yeah, and you learn to, obviously there's things you want to do, and I think that's fine. Once in a while you also do something for your personal growth and experience. But after a while it just gets easier to say no, and we just have to say no to a lot of things that we would like to do. It's every day someone says, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we built this? It's like, yes, but and it's that becomes harder as the team grows, because people get excited about projects, and you need to disappoint them quite often.
I'm curious about one thing I forgot to ask you when we were talking about bootstrapping. So I'll recover now. Did you have a business plan at the beginning? In
No.
2-3 years?
No, business plan. No, we knew we gave ourselves 1 year to make some money and just to see if we could get to something, and that was the business plan. No, we didn't have a business plan. We just had a deadline. We knew when the money would run out, and we had no idea if this was gonna work or not. So there was nothing sophisticated behind it. No.
One of the things most people undervalue when they take money from someone else. I mean, this happened to us. So we bootstrapped for the first 2 years, then we decided, because it was very good, to get some investors in. But you start to, like now for me, to dedicate a lot of time to these things, like business plan. We didn't have a deck, ever. Because what's the point of having a deck? If
you don't need one. Yeah, you don't need one.
When someone was asking, send me a deck, I don't have a deck. I have a business that is super different. So you start to dedicate like 20-30% of your time to this thing that keep you away from the product. And what I saw from my past experience, that could be a pivot point in which you actually start to see yourself as, putting your time not in the product, not in the user, not in the business of the company, but on other things. That is to me, is a very bad loop, because you started to think, why am I doing this? I actually wanted to, let's say, change online forms forever. I didn't want to spend my time in New York or Paris to raise 20 million. So it's strange.
Yeah, I think it depends as well. Sometimes you need the money, right? If you need to, for example, to hire a development team, if there's a big production cost or anything to just get started and you need to raise money, I think it's a different story. But we have our office in a startup campus, and we see everyone around us, talking to VCs and raising money. And it's a full-time job indeed, for at least one. You definitely need 2 co-founders then. Otherwise, just if you're alone, that's the only thing you're doing. Sometimes for as long as a year. And I think what I like about our journey is that we could spend all that time into the product and into growing it. And so indeed, when someone asked as well, like, oh, do you have a business plan? No, because it's just in your head, and you're just trying to. You don't know how fast you will grow. You don't know why would you put these things on paper. you're just trying to move forward. So no, we don't have any of that.
Then I would want to add that is not wrong or right to go bootstrapping or VC.
No.
Depends on who you are, what you want to build. So obviously, if you want to build something super big, AI, deep tech, medical services,
You
is
have
completely
to.
different. So we don't want to judge who's raising money, but it's just, conversation, how cool it is and how undervalued it is to go with your money, take all the risk, choose the velocity, choose the speed, and how to allocate your time. So the last 3 questions, very personal. So first one, you are now at 800,000 users. That is crazy. 3 million annual recurring revenue. What's the biggest lesson you learned on your skin during this crazy roller coaster?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lessons every day. I think the biggest one is you learn a lot about yourself, who you are and especially working with your partner as well. You get to learn each other as co-founders, not just as partners in life. And so for me, a big thing was how to be better with feedback, how to get feedback from my partner and not be offended by it. That's something I struggled with in the first days. And for me, it was easy with colleagues, but it was less easy to do that with my partner. I think for me, we also learned that we need a lot of systems, and that's obviously very linked to our personal story, but we have so not only at work, but also in our personal lives, just to be able to do this and to be productive. We have shifts, for example. So someone has the morning shift, someone has the evening shift, and it means that if you have the morning shift, you take care of the kids, you bring them to school, and only then you go to work. But then in the evening, you can work as long as you want. And then the other person takes over, and so this changes every other week. But there's things that we had to develop. Like, we didn't know all of this when we just started out, but there's things that developed throughout the years that helped us work better. We also worked from home for 4 years, and we got isolated, and we decided to get an actual office and to be out of our bubble and to build our network, but also to surround ourselves with people that are doing the same things. And I think if you're bootstrapping, it can get lonely as well, because there's a small team, there's no investors, there's not a big network on board, and so coming out of our bubble definitely helped. And I think another one for me would be to hire sooner. Like, I think we were with just people for a bit too long. But again, that's then the downside of bootstrapping. You don't have the big budget from the start, and you can also not afford to hire senior people. So we waited quite long with that. But I think in hindsight, maybe we should have done it a bit earlier.
And now, what was your biggest mistake? Obviously, we don't want to know about disasters, but the mistake you did that taught you the most.
I think there's not really big disasters or mistakes that happened. I think because we've had the mindset to just try things, and if it doesn't work, we just do something else. And so we didn't have big disasters in the history of Tally. I think the main learning is we're shifting now from. We were 2 people trying to build a product, and now we are a team and we're trying to build a company, and that's something completely different. And I think we learned that we're good at the first part, but we have to learn a lot in the second part. That's kind of what's keeping me busy right now. But I don't really have like a mistake or a disaster, that has really defined us throughout the years.
Good for you. And what was the best piece of advice you've received from a mentor, a colleague?
Yeah, I think it was not really from one person, but maybe multiple persons, and it also kind of is related to what happened in our private life. So at one point we had our first baby, and it was pretty chaotic, but then we had our son 3 years later, and then I decided to take a few months off, right? So there's no such thing as maternity leave, obviously, if you own your own business. But I decided to do that, and Philip also took it a bit slower at that point. Nothing exploded, and the business kept on running, and we gave ourselves a bit of headspace just to take a step back and realize, like, okay, where do we want to go next? But doing that was quite difficult for us, to slow down a little bit. I think we were also pretty burned out by that point, so it was also necessary to do it. But I think and obviously people have told us this, but it's sometimes harder to actually do it. It's just to take a break once in a while, or at least try to take a break and not work. That always helps to come back with a fresh mind. Like just taking a random day off, like we almost never do that, but when I do it, I always remember, why it's so important. And I think another thing is when we hire people, it's to really follow your gut feeling. Like someone can be the best person on paper, but if you don't really feel an instant click personally, it's rarely gonna work. And that's advice that I've received from a lot of founders, but I think it's only when you experience this that you realize that this is really true. It's in the end we're in tech, but we're a lot more in a people business than you would think.
The very last question, So let's say I'm 29 years old guy. I quit my job. I want to build something. Let's say I want to bootstrap because I hear this podcast and I got very interested in what Marie is saying. What's the first thing I need to do?
I think for us, we just tried to build something very small as fast as possible and try to get it in the hands of some people. You can give the advice to try to sell something first and then start building, but I personally just find that very difficult. So I think if you have an idea, try to scope it down as much as possible, like still make sure that it's good, but just build a very simple version of it and spread it on any channel you can find, even if it's just friends and family to start with, but just do that as fast as possible and only then invest more in it. So I think MVPing the MVP, that I think that's the advice I would give, and surround yourself with people that are also doing the same stuff, that are building things, because that will motivate you a lot. And also don't be afraid to ask for help. Like I didn't do that for years, and now let's say you follow someone on Twitter or you hear a podcast and you're like, okay, I can just send Marie a DM and I can just ask, a very concrete question, and there's quite high chance that you will get a reply. That's also something I learned throughout the years. And I think it's easier to follow people that are just a few steps ahead than people that are years ahead, because that's just too abstract. But someone that is a few months ahead, you'll learn a lot from them. Yeah.
So build something, build an MVP. Second one, surround yourself with builders because it gives you energy. Third one, find the right mentor. A few months, couple of years ahead, not 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah, just don't be afraid to ask and to share, because everyone has the same problems. So, it's always interesting for someone. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marie. I'm looking forward to meet you in Milan for the Product Heroes conference. And thank you and good luck and keep building.
Thank you so much. And looking forward to October as well.
Ciao! Product Heroes è l'ecosistema per chi fa product management in Italia. Ogni anno organizziamo una delle più grandi product conference in Europa, con oltre 1000 persone. Finora abbiamo aiutato più di 200.000 persone con master, guide, formazione in azienda, articoli e meetup. Se anche tu vuoi conoscere tutti i segreti del product management, iscriviti al nostro podcast. Scoprirai i consigli e le storie dei più grandi product leader e imparerai a costruire, lanciare e muovere le metriche del tuo prodotto. Ti aspetto su YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast. Per tutto il resto puoi trovarci su productheroes.it e ricordati sempre che dopo i tempi duri vengono sempre i tempi eroici.